Welcome back to Grade 8 History, Unit Number 1, Creating Canada, 1850 to 1890. This is Lesson Number 6, How was Confederation Achieved? And this is a picture of the coin I was telling you guys about in a past lesson. Remember that famous painting we talked about showing the meeting of the Fathers of Confederation? Well, that painting was turned into the obverse image for this commemorative silver dollar, which was released in 1982. Before we begin today's lesson, let's consider the following. How much time do you think it took for the leaders of the colonies of British North America to reach an agreement on Confederation? Why don't you put the video on pause so that you can jot down your response to this question that I just read. Please put the video on pause now. And let's continue. Bringing all of the people of British North America together to unify the colonies was a major feat. In September of 1861, delegates from New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and PEI met to discuss a maritime union. When Macdonald and other pro-Confederation leaders from the province of Canada heard of this meeting, they asked to attend. And here's a number of iconic images from the different conferences and meetings which were held leading up to Confederation in 1867. When I'm finished speaking, you're going to put the video on pause so that you can write your response to this question. Based on what you see in this photo, which people living in British North America were not represented at the conference? Please put the video on pause now. All right, let's move on. The Charlottetown Conference was the first of three sets of meetings held between 1864 and 1866 to discuss Confederation. Newfoundland was not represented at this conference, and colonies in the Pacific region were not included. Through lengthy speeches and many arguments, politicians from the province of Canada and the Maritimes discussed the idea of union. And here is yet another commemorative silver dollar, this one commemorating the Charlottetown and Quebec conferences in 1864. As well, there was also a commemorative postage stamp released in 1964, commemorating 100 years since the Charlottetown Conference. In addition to the daily discussions, there were various social events held during the conferences. The leaders' wives and unmarried daughters and sisters often attended the dinner parties and dances, which are meant to provide breaks between the negotiations. Although women were not allowed to vote in the 1860s, the women who attended these social functions were able to share their political ideas with the men who they dined and danced with. So what you're going to do is put the video on pause when I'm done speaking so that you can take a closer look at the painting on the left and answer this question. What message about the role of women is the artist showing us in this painting? Please put the video on pause now. By the end of the Charlottetown Conference, the maritime colonies decided to pursue uniting with the province of Canada. Now, all the leaders needed to work out the terms of Confederation. A second conference was held in Quebec City in October of 1864. Representatives from Canada West, Canada East, and the Atlantic colonies met to discuss the needs and wants of each colony. The Maritimes wanted access to new trade partners in British North America. They wanted a railroad system that would allow them to trade with the other colonies. PEI wanted a ferry system since it was separated from the other colonies by water. Also, PEI wanted a resolution to the problem of land ownership so that farmers could own the land they worked on. Canada East wanted special rights for language, religion, and education. Just to point out, a commemorative 50-cent coin as well as a commemorative stamp commemorating the 1864 Quebec Conference. MacDonald wanted a very strong central government that would keep the new country united and prevent a civil war, like in the US. He wrote the majority of the resolutions, or decisions, that were reached during the Quebec Conference. Just look at this image on the left. MacDonald actually doodled on his copy of the Quebec resolutions. When I'm done talking, please put the video on pause so that you can take a closer look at his doodles and answer this question. What do the doodles reveal about MacDonald's personality outside of being a politician? Put the video on pause now. All right, let's continue. The Quebec Conference established that the federal government would have two houses. In the lower house, to be called the House of Commons, representation would be based on the size of each province. This meant that, for example, Canada West and Canada East would have more representatives than PEI. In the upper house, which would be called the Senate, there would be more equal representation of all of the provinces. It was agreed that the federal government would be responsible for quote-unquote Indian affairs. It would absorb the debts of the colonies up to a certain amount. The federal government would also control all major sources of revenue, such as taxes related to trade. In return, the federal government would give each province a payment to help cover their expenses. During the Quebec Conference, PEI and Newfoundland decided not to join Confederation. With the list of resolutions drafted, the Fathers of Confederation from Canada West, Canada East, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick traveled to England to write the British North America Act. This act would join the former colonies together as a united, partially self-governing country by an act of British Parliament. The London Conference took place between December of 1866 and March of 1867. July 1st, 1867 became known as Dominion Day. Queen Victoria read a proclamation declaring that the province of Canada, which was now split into two new provinces called Ontario and Quebec, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, were officially united in the Dominion of Canada. John A. Macdonald was appointed Prime Minister on July 1st of 1867, and he was elected to the position a month later. For his efforts in leading the creation of Canada, he received a knighthood from Queen Victoria. In both Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, people protested Confederation. Many people felt the Union had been forced on them due to their lack of voting rights. Still, there was a lot of enthusiasm and hope for a better future. And to borrow a quote from the classic sci-fi series Star Trek, the Canadian adventure was just beginning. So I'm going to leave you guys with one final question to consider at home, and we'll talk about it in our next class. Here it is. Which person or event do you think was most significant to the outcome of Confederation? And why do you feel this way? If you don't feel ready to answer this question, it means you need to go back and watch this video at least one more time. But if you're ready, please put the video on pause now. And I look forward to our discussion of the questions, the highlights from this video in tomorrow's class. But until we meet again, this concludes today's video.